We're sitting here on the 6th day of the Shiva for my father, Rabbi Shalom, Rabbi Chaim Mandel, Zichron Libracha. I think it's fair to say, without exaggeration, that the word gentle was invented for my father. He was the most gentle person I think I've ever met. And I'm not saying that because he was my father. Obviously, I knew him well because he was my father. And obviously, one does not know many other people as well as one knows one's own father. But he was truly the most gentle soul I've ever met. Very, very compassionate, empathetic. And he was known for this throughout Australia. So many people told me that he comforted them when they lost a loved one, and he was the one who made the biggest impression on them, and he was willing to listen to people's problems for hours. I remember this from the earliest time. From childhood. I remember him sitting on the phone literally for hours into the night, listening to people's sorrows. But he had the ability to listen. He had a genius for compassion, which is rare, truly rare. And I hope I learned something from him in that regard. That's on top of what I just said about his love of Torah and support of Torah. But he's known throughout Australia, by most of the Jews in Australia, he's known for his compassion, his ability to talk to everybody and to listen to everybody. He even used to go on Friday afternoons to a special facility where they had many older people who were really in advanced stages of dementia or different behavioral issues and problems that they had, such that most people didn't feel they could possibly deal with these people. They couldn't talk to them, they couldn't visit them. They behaved in inappropriate ways, and it was very difficult to handle them. We would go to them on Friday afternoons, make kiddush for them, and just sit there and talk and listen to them and talk to them. And he was able to calm them down and get them to feel good where no one else could do such a thing. And how do I know this? I wasn't there. These have been during years that I lived here. I wasn't there. I heard this in Melbourne now from a young rabbi, relatively young rabbi, who is now the head of Jewish care in Melbourne, which is an organization that deals with the aged, the elderly, etc., which my father was the head of for many years. And when this younger rabbi started in this line, in this job, as sort of an apprentice to my father, he used to go with him on these visits on Friday afternoons. And he related the following. He said that no one could get these people to calm down or to smile, to be happy. He said, I couldn't believe it. I went with Rabbi Mandel many times on a Friday afternoon to see what the job was, what's going on here, what do you do, what needs to be done. And he said, I saw these people. They just saw Rabbi Mandel, they became calm and they smiled. They said that no one had this effect on them, but my father did. So I think it tells you something about him. What I related before in Hebrew, and what I said at the Levaya, I'll say again now. One of the things I spoke about my father's love of Torah, dedication to Torah. And one of the examples I brought was that when I was 4, I remember myself from the age of 3 or 4 years old, we lived in a western suburb of Sydney called Stratfield, where there was a very small Jewish community. Most of the Jewish institutions, schools and what have you, were in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, which is a long way away, about an hour's drive. And so at a young age, 3, 4, I was sent to a local kindergarten in Stratfield. I even remember the name. Meriden was the name of the kindergarten. An upscale private kindergarten run by the Church of England, in actual fact. That doesn't mean everyone was Anglican, people who went there, but it was just a good kindergarten. I remember to this day, I remember the place quite well. I even have photographs of the place from more recent years. Anyway, I was sent there because that was the only thing there was. And one day I came back from kindergarten. My father asked me, what did you learn today, my son, in kindergarten? So I told him that a man came today. He was a priest, an Anglican priest. I don't know if I said Anglican priest or not. Probably didn't know those words at the time. And I said, well, he told us that God is everywhere, and God is in the school, and God is here, and God is there, and God's in the church, and okay, something else, some kind of drosha along those lines. And so I was, a little 4-year-old boy, and I told my father what I'd heard. And my father, he heard this. He obviously wasn't tickled pink with this, but he said, okay, God's here, and God's there, and God's everywhere, and God's in the synagogue. And I, of course, being precocious 4-year-old, I said, well, he didn't say anything about God being in the synagogue. He said God's in the church. Okay. So that was the last day I was in that kindergarten. On that very day, my father decided to remove me from that kindergarten and to take me to a Jewish kindergarten. But you have to understand what that entailed. It meant driving me an hour to the eastern suburbs in the morning and driving back, and then picking me up in the afternoon, another hour there, another hour back. It's 4 hours every day in the car, apart from everything else you had to do, so that I would go to a Jewish kindergarten. And that's what happened. And that should tell you something about my father. And then about a year and a half later, we moved to the eastern suburbs. So the issue became less acute. So then I was also dropped to school, etc. But it wasn't as far. It was 20 minutes, 15-20 minute drive, not an hour. That tells you one thing about my father. Another thing I mentioned was that it's not common to find someone in his early 40s who takes a time out from his life and his responsibilities to come to Israel to study Torah and to get his smicha officially and finally, which he did at that time. He was 42. And he came here and studied for a couple of years, and he got smicha from Rav Rashi Unterman at the time, Rav Yudah Unterman. Yes, Yudah Unterman. And that's also not something that happens. Not something that you see much. Another thing I mentioned is the fact that the fact that I was, which, by the way, that what my father studying, choosing to continue his Torah education at that age. He also always mentioned that the Nazis stole my youth from me, which of course is true.
You look altogether than anybody who survived the Shoah.
But he always stressed the lost opportunities of learning that were lost as a result of this. And he made up for that to the best of his ability. And it reminds one a little bit of Rabbi Akiva, who was willing to sit down with Tinokol Shabbat Rabban, with school children, age of 40. My father was 42 when he did this. He was studying in Machon Shilo with young men half his age, literally. Another thing I mentioned was that my father very much supported my desire to study Torah for many years. He supported it in every way, and little that I may have achieved has a lot to do, as I mentioned, with regards to Sharon Alei Shalom also. That without Sharon and without my father, it would not have been possible.